Namaste. Good evening. This is Dr. Aparna. I am your emotional healing synergist. I am an Ayurvedic psychotherapist, a passionate infopreneur, medical writer, and now a budding YouTuber. In my pursuit to address, promote, and propagate Ayurveda and psychotherapy globally, I come up with discussions every week on Ayurveda, mental health, psychotherapy related topics, and I also do full book summaries or synopsises of books related to mental health arena or and mental health self-help books or books related to relating to neuroscience, because I am an avid reader, and I love reading books and sharing information to people. So in this discourse, previous two sessions, I was talking about a book called The Courage to be Disliked. This is the session three or part three of the full book summary. So if you want if you want detailed discussions of the first two summaries, you will find it in my LinkedIn and YouTube. I'll link in the description below if you want to. And let's get started without wasting any time. So to say, see, as I've already, as this has been already discussed, that in the courage to be disliked, the 5 night discussions between this book is all about the 5 night discussions, the questions and the answers, between the young man and the philosopher. you know that form the core of the book, so presenting various philosophical concepts and teaching. So one of it could be is, we have touched it on this in the last session. That means the author says that all you can do with regard to your own life is to choose the best path that you believe in. On the other hand, what kind of judgment, do other people pass on that choice? That is the task of other people. So the author says the judgment, the kind of judgment that other people pass on our life, our work, is their task. It is not our task. So that is the task of other people and is not a matter that you can or I can do anything about. So, what we can do is, all we can do with regard to our own life is to choose the best path that we believe in. So, for in my case, that I believe in your case, that is you believe in. So, here the courage to be disliked follows a conversation between. This is just a recap for people who have missed. So, the courage to be disliked follows a conversation between a young man and a philosopher as they discuss the tenets of Alfred Adler's theories. So, we discussed in the last session what is all about Adlerian psychology. So, what are Alfred Adler's theories? That is the core of the book here. Adler is a lesser known 20th century psychologist whose work stands up, to the fruit and junk. I said Adler's individual psychology is a bit different to, in many other ways, different to the conventional Sigmund Freud's and Carl Jung's psychology and beliefs. So this belief in a liberating approach to happiness, in which each human being, has the power and potential to live happily and fulfilled life without worry about the past or future. So the what is the overall summary, just to why kind of fresh it up a little bit for those who have missed or not followed. not being following. So the courage to be disliked is a self-help book, we all know. So this book actually encourages us readers to take control of our own lives and to be true to ourselves regardless of the opinions of others. So, this book is entirely based on the philosophical ideas of Alfred Adler and presents the concept of lifestyle, which refers to the way we live our lives and the choices we make. So here, so this book is, as I said, presents the concept of lifestyle, so which refers to the way we live our lives and the choices we make. So here the authors argue that our lifestyles are shaped by our feelings of inferiority, so which are rooted in our early childhood experiences. So they encourage readers, all of us, to overcome these feelings of inferiority and to create more fulfilling lives by accepting and embracing our uniqueness and individuality. So why this book is wonderful is, this book gives you the approval, like this book kind of tells you that, or at least tells me that I am in the right path, because we are constantly searching for validation. So the book also emphasizes on the importance of taking responsibility for our own actions and decisions and developing a sense. So the dialogues here goes up to the span of 5 nights. So this actually this book is inspired by a Socratic dialogue. If you know Socrates, you know, and through the conversation, so it goes like this. So this is, I think this book, it is not mentioned in the book, but this is so relevant. This quote I felt is so relevant. So when you are 18, you worry about what everybody is thinking of you. That's true. When you're 18, you worry about what everybody is thinking of you. But when you are 40, you don't give a darn, or you don't give a damn what anybody thinks of you. So when you're 40, you don't give a damn about anybody, what anybody thinks of you. But when you're 60, you realize that nobody has been thinking about you at all. So how beautiful this is. When you turn, when you turn 60, you realize that nobody has been thinking about you at all. So this is like my favorite takeaway. So this book is actually the Japanese phenomenon that shows you to how to change your life and achieve real happiness, that is mentioned on the book. So see some great insights in the book, such as your past does not determine your future. Happiness is a choice we make. So how we fabricate anger, all these things, a competitive mindset can affect your mental health, and the courage to dislike leads to long lasting happiness. The whole message is the courage to be disliked. So here, in the concept of denial of trauma, we had discussed. So this is like in Adlerian psychology, trauma is definitively denied. That means this concept, when it came to existence, this was a very new and a revolutionary point. That means certainly the Freudian view of trauma is fascinating. Freud's idea is that Freud is Sigmund Freud. Sigmund Freud is called the father of psychology. So Freud's idea is that a person's psychic wounds, that means traumas, cause his or her present unhappiness. So Freud believed that a person's trauma caused the present unhappiness. When you treat a person's life as a vast narrative, there is an easily understandable casualty and a sense of dramatic development that creates strong impressions. And that is extremely attractive. But Adler here, in denial, he is, he opposes the idea of, trauma affecting the present. So, in denial of the trauma argument, he says that Adler says no experience in itself is a cause for our success or failure. So no experience is actually the cause of our success or failure, but that means we do not suffer from the shock of our experiences, the so-called trauma. He says, but instead we make out of them whatever suits our purposes. So we are not determined by our experiences, but the meaning we give them is self-determining. So, and the second thing here discussed is over the 5 nights conversation that philosopher says that people fabricate anger. That means anger is an instantaneous emotion that we all know. So there is a story. See, one day a mother and daughter were quarreling loudly. Then the telephone rang. Hello. The mother picked up the receiver hurriedly, and her voice still was with anger. The caller was her daughter's homeroom teacher. As soon as the mother realized that on the call there was her daughter's teacher, the tone of her voice changed from anger to being very polite and calm. So then for the next 5 minutes or so, she carried on a conversation in her best telephone voice. So once she hung up in a moment, her expression changed again, and she then went back to yelling at her daughter. So this is here he says that we choose the anger, the mother chose to be anger and she chose to be calm. So we choose that. The Adler says that we choose that. So, well, that's the youth says here, the young man says here, that's not a particularly unusual story. So he says, so philosopher says here, don't you see, in a word, anger is a tool that can be taken out as needed. When she wanted to shout on her daughter, she did that. When she wanted to keep calm when the phone rang, that means it can be put away the moment the phone rings and pulled out again after one hangs up. So the mother isn't yelling in anger she cannot control. It is not the anger she couldn't have controlled. She is simply using the anger to overpower her daughter with a loud voice and thereby assert her opinions. So, in summary, he says that you did not fly into a rage and then start shouting. It is solely that you got angry so that you could shout. So, in other words, in order to fulfill the goal of shouting, you created the emotion of anger. That is what he says, just to fulfill the goal of shouting, just to overpower her daughter and assert her opinions. She created the emotion of anger. That's what philosopher told. So he said that people fabricate anger, and they say that anger is an emotional, if it was an emotional outrage. No, he says that that is chosen outrage. So next important point discussed is feeling of inferiority. So value judgment of oneself. That means here philosopher says that means in Adler's native German, the word feeling of inferiority has to do with one's value judgment of oneself. That means the young man asks, what is value judgment? The philosopher says that it's the feeling that one has no worth, or that one is worth only so much. So he says in conclusion that we cannot alter objective facts, but subjective interpretations can be altered. So, as much as one likes, and we are inhabitants of a subjective world. So here, so what on earth could this value be? So what is that? See, for example, take diamonds. For instance, which are traded at a high value. Diamonds are traded usually at a high value or currency, to a currency. So we find people. We find particular values for these things and say 1 carat is this much, so that prices are such and such. For diamonds there is a fixed price, so 1 carat costs this much, this item costs this much. So but if you change your point of view, a diamond is nothing but a little stone. So here philosopher in other words says value is something that is based on a social context. That means the value given to a $1 bill is not an objectively attributed value, though that might be a common sense approach. So, if one considers its actual cost as printed material, the value is nowhere near a dollar. If you consider just it is a printed material, then it has no value, as the diamond is nothing but a stone. So, a healthy feeling of inferiority is not something that comes from comparing oneself to others. So it comes from one's comparisons with ideal self. So what is that? So what is feeling of inferiority and versus inferiority complex? Here he discusses that. So what is feeling of inferiority? So if a person, for example, thinks that I am not well educated, so I will just have to try harder than anyone else. So this is inferiority complex. Inferiority, the feeling that I am not well educated, so I will have to try harder than anyone else. This is feeling inferior, feeling of inferiority. But here, inferiority complex means a condition having begun to use one feelings of inferiority as a kind of excuse. So somebody is using it, has become a condition, a constant practice of having begun to use their one's feeling of inferiority as a kind of excuse. That means, for example, here what we said here in feeling of inferiority, I am not well educated, so I will have to, just have to try harder than anybody else. But here in inferiority complex, I am not well educated, so the person comes into conclusion that I can't succeed. I am not well educated, so I can't succeed. So here the next thing is, I am not good looking, maybe, so I can't get married. So the person comes into a conclusion, uses his feelings of inferiority as a kind of excuse. Because I'm not good looking, I can't get married. So, when one is conscious of competition and victory and defeat, it is inevitable that feelings of inferiority will arise. So, because one is constantly comparing oneself to others and thinking, so I beat that person or I lost to that person. So the inferiority complex and the superiority complex are extensions of, the feelings, he says. So when a person is conscious of competition and he's conscious of victory and defeat, so it is inevitable that feelings of inferiority will arise. Why? Because one is constantly comparing oneself to others and thinking. So the next important concept is, so here in conclusion of this, he says that feelings of inferiority and or inferiority complex should be used in a healthy manner. That means our pursuit should be towards the pursuit of superiority, but to not having the superiority complex. That means we should also not have, like, we should not have inferiority complex. A person should also not have superiority complex, that I am superior than others, I am well educated, so I can succeed in anything. That is also bad. Superiority complex or overconfidence is also not something healthy. But inferiority complex is also not healthy. So here the philosopher says, or the Adlerian psychology says, because that people are mostly on the inferiority side, complex side, so that's why our pursuit should be always towards the superiority. So the next important concept is separation of tasks versus non-interference. So, what is separation of tasks here? So, interpersonal troubles. As I said, if you remember, that all the unhappiness, according to Adlerian psychology, is because of the interpersonal relationships. He said, so how? So, what is the solution for that? Is separation of tasks. That means, see, interpersonal troubles, why are they caused? They are caused because intruding on caused by intruding on other people's tasks, or having one's own tasks intruded on. That means carrying out the separation of tasks is enough to change one's interpersonal relationships dramatically. So, to further explain, the young man asked how to tell whose task it is. So, how do you separate tasks? How should I know that what is my task and what is other person's task? So, who ultimately? So he replies. The philosopher replies that the person who is ultimately going to receive the result brought about by the choice that is made. So, when the child has made the choice of not studying, ultimately the result of that decision, not being able to keep up in class or get into the preferred school, for instance, does not have to be received by the parents. Clearly, it is the child who has to receive it. In other words, studying is the child's task. See, what happens is, here author says that studying and willing to study is the child's task. Parents should not enforce or impose their will or their superiority on children, or try to overpower them, forcing them to study. What they can instead do is, or sit them and make them study. Studying is a child's task, it is child's duty. But what parents can do instead is, to know and to encourage, that they are there to support the child in every step, wherever he or she needs it. So here he also explains the concept of non-interference. That means, what is the difference between separation of task and non-interference? So, for example, Adlerian psychology does not recommend the non interference approach. So, he believes, so what is his belief of non interference? Non interference, he says, is the attitude of not even knowing, or not even being interested in knowing what the child is doing. That also not should not be there. The attitude of just not knowing whatever your child is doing, and not even being interested to know what is going on in your child lives, that should also not be there. Instead, it is by knowing what the child is doing, that one protects him. So, if it's studying that is the issue, one tells the child that is his task, and one lets him know that, the parent lets the child know that he is ready to assist him whenever he has the urge to study. But parents must not intrude on child's task. When no requests are being made, it does not do meddle in things. So, forcing change while ignoring the person's intentions will only lead to an intense reaction. If you force some change, while ignoring the child's intentions, what happens is this will only lead to an intense reactions. So intervening in other people tasks and taking on other people tasks turns, one's life into something is heavy and full of hardship. This also, for example, we can say that, our parents, even, after the marriage, many of the children, the husband and wife come to us that, parents are, forcing us to do something that we do not want to do. That means they are imposing their beliefs, and they have the authority of our decisions. So here the author says that, deciding what to do, where, see, deciding on what to study, when to study, what subject to study, what career to pursue, whom to marry, where to live, how to live, when to have kids, is not the parents' task. What happens is, if for example, intervening in the, children's task here and taking on, their tasks will actually, it is very difficult and turns like an headache and heavy and full of hardship also for parents. It is not only bad for children, it is also not good for parents. So if you are leading a life of worry and suffering which stems from interpersonal relationship, learn the boundary. So he says that every relationship has to have a boundary. That means from here on, this is not my task. That means I have raised my child, and given him or her the values, the education, and, the way to, earn financial independence. So from here on, it is not my task, it is my child's task to do so. And discard other people tasks. So we are discarding the, child task. It is good for him or her as well, as they have the authority to take their decisions in life. And this is the first step towards lightening of the load. That means to make your life simpler, to make the parents life simpler by lightening the load and make the life simpler. So this is one of the, things that is discussed. That means, separation of tasks, or, you can always know that, what is going on in your children's life, your daughter or your son. But here, it is only said that you do not have the authority to impose on your beliefs, your opinions, and your decisions on them. That is it. So, see, courage to be disliked. Here, there is one more thing which is discussed, is courage to be disliked. So, this, why is this said? So, the young man asks the philosopher, why is this said and what is this? So, what is it? So, you're worried about how other people are looking at you. That means you're worried about being judged by other people. So that is why you are constantly craving recognition from others. So what happens? This happens to all of us. So we always, human beings, are worried about how other people are looking at you. How, we are worried, constantly worried about being judged by other people. That is why you are constantly, what happens is, we all crave constantly for recognition from others. Now, why are you worried about other people looking at you anyway? The philosopher says, why are you worried about other people looking at you anyway? So Adlerian psychology has an easy answer. That means you have not done the separation of tasks. That means you only have to worry about your goals, your work, and your thing. What other people think of you is not your task. How other people judge you is not your task. It is others' task. That is called separation of tasks. So you assume that even things that should be others people tasks are your own. So we cannot do anything. I cannot do about people who judge me. whether it is right or wrong. So I don't have any authority on or control on that, but I can only have the control on my tasks, not other people's tasks. That is what the author has to say. So freedom is being disliked. So freedom here is, the author says it beautifully, that it is being disliked by other people. That means it is the proof that you are exercising your freedom and living in freedom. So that is the proof. If some people dislike you, that means some people may like you, some people may dislike you. You can't make everybody happy. That itself is the proof that you are exercising your freedom and living in freedom, and that is a sign that you are living in accordance with your own principles. So the thing is, if somebody is disliking you, somebody is jealous of you, that is the proof or the sign that you are living in accordance with your own principles. So, and one more thing is, the author says here is, you are not the center of the universe. That means every place is central, and no place is at the same time. So every place is central and no place is central at the same time. So the globe may be, dotted with an infinite number of centers in accordance with the viewer's location and the angle of view. That is the nature of the globe. So we should always not think that we are the only center of universe. That means people are only judging about us, people are only talking about us. The actual thing is, nobody is have the time or the thing to actually think about us a lot, like we worry in the mind. It is all inside here. So once you know how big the world is, and you will see that all the hardship you went through in the school was a storm in a teacup, just a storm in a teacup. That means the moment you leave the teacup, that raging storm will be gone, and a gentle breeze will greet you in its place. So he says, if I change, the only person you can change is yourself. The world will change. So if I can change, the world will change. If I change, the world will change. This means that the world can be changed only by me, and no one else will change it for me. So the author at the end says that someone has to start. So, we always say that other people might not be cooperative, but that is not connected to you or me. See, the author says that you should start with no regard to whether others are cooperative or not. Others being cooperative or not is none of your business. The business is just to start and live our life with in accord to our own principles. So there ends the session. So all the best in your quest to get better. Don't settle and live with passion. So thank you for staying tuned, and I'll meet you in the next session. So I think I have talked about this book enough. What all I could gather, the highlights and the takeaways, and whatever I liked, I have discussed. And let me know how did you think of my synopsis. And thank you for staying tuned. If you have any queries or any insights for me, please do post it in the comment section. If you want me to talk about some other mental health arena books, just let me know. Or if you have any queries on any Ayurveda and psychotherapy related topics, please let me know that also in the comment section. Thank you. Namaste.